Alright, so now it's time for our first PHP example. A PHP script can be placed anywhere in an HTML document. A PHP script starts with the opening PHP tag and ends with the closing PHP tag, which we can see here in our example. The default file extension for PHP files is .php. A PHP file normally contains HTML tags and some PHP scripting code. To get started, we'll need to download XAMPP, or some people may call it XAMPP, install it on our machine. There are versions for Windows, and if you're using a Mac, you can also download a version for Mac or Linux. Also, we'll need to download Visual Studio Code. Remember, these are both free and open source technologies, and the installation process is fairly straightforward. Once you have these downloaded and installed, then we can jump straight into our first PHP script. Alright, so now we have downloaded and installed XAMPP and Visual Studio Code. At this point, we can go ahead and start up our Apache web server. So open up your XAMPP control panel and start Apache. This will give us a localized web server on your local machine. In order to access this web server, you can go to your web browser, type in localhost, /dashboard, and if you get this error, that means that your default port, which is port 8000, is being occupied by another service. In the event that you get this error, you can simply fix it by going back to your Apache control panel, click on Explorer, open up your Apache folder, open your configuration folder, and edit your httpd.configuration file. I can do this by right clicking on it, and I'm going to edit it with Notepad. Once you've opened this file, you can do a simple search with Control and F, type in listen, and here on line 60 we can change our default port from port 8000. Here I'm going to change my port to listen on 8080. Click on save, and then back in our browser we specify to localhost that we are listening on port 8080. Okay, it is always a good practice to stop your Apache web server and restart it so that it can accept those new changes. Now let's refresh our page, and there we have it. This is our Apache backend, our dashboard, so we know that Apache works. In order to access our scripts once we create them, we'll need to save them inside our httdocs folder. So if you go back to the original XAMPP directory and navigate to the htdocs folder, this is where all our scripts will live and run. For this course, we can create a folder and call it web development. Now that we have our folder, we can head over to Visual Studio Code and we can create our first script. let us create a new file, and let's just save it. So to get back to our XAMPP folder, we'll go to the C drive, scroll down, XAMPP, HTTdocs or htdocs, and we'll save it inside our web development folder. We can call this file hello.html, and I'll change this to all files. Click on save, and now we can create our first PHP script. So let's quickly whip up an HTML file. So of course we need our head. Inside our head tag we have our title, and we can call this web development, and then of course we have our body. Now we can specify our opening PHP tag, close it off, now we can just simply print something to our screen. So we'll use the echo keyword, and I'll actually use double quotes. We can save this, and now we'll run it in our browser. So we can come back to our dashboard, and we can type hello.html. Now one thing I want to point out, if we had saved our file in this general htdocs folder, then we would not have to specify a directory. We could run it just like this. But because we created a folder called web development, we'll have to specify that our file actually lives in that directory. So we just type web development and our / and hit enter. And as you can see, nothing actually shows up on our screen. Can you guess where we went wrong? You guessed it. We saved our file with a .html extension. In order to run a PHP script, we need to save it with a .php extension. So what I'll do, I'll create a new file, save it as hello, and instead we put the PHP extension. Save it, and I'll just go ahead and copy this code over to our PHP file, save it. Now we can go back to our browser and change this extension to PHP. And there you have it, your first PHP script.